Welcome to the life you crave. Simple and sustainable weight loss for women who have better things to do than diet. I'm your host, Leah Pinelli. I help ambitious, badass women stop overeating, overworking, and overgiving to lose weight from a place of love. I'll help you simplify weight loss, end your overwhelm, and create the life you crave. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to this podcast. Let's get started.
Hello, my loves, my fempreneurs in the group and female leaders. I'm so happy to see you all here today on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So as promised, this is your unconventional Thanksgiving survival guide. I have to preface this by saying I must have eaten something yesterday that didn't agree with me because I am not feeling great today. And I feel like there's a part of me that's threatening to need to run to the bathroom at some point. So if I happen to stop this video abruptly, just know that something is not agreeing with my body. But my hope is that I'm going to be able to get through this 30 minutes or so with you so that I can really, truly give you, because I would not dream of missing this. I want to really, truly give you real, actionable ways that you can not just get through the holiday, but actually maximize your pleasure over the holiday without doing any of that kind of like deprivation, portion control, all of that stuff, which actually depletes your pleasure factor, right? It reduces your pleasure factor. So instead today, I'm going to actually teach you a totally unconventional way of approaching the holiday, of being with food and with people in a way that actually will short circuit habits of overeating. So let's dive straight in. I have three, they're not exactly tips. I have three tools that I'm going to teach you today. And these are big tools. I'm not holding back with you guys. These are tools that I teach my clients, my paying clients. Of course, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I have, many, many, many more tools that I teach inside of the Fempire. The Fempire is my private group for female entrepreneurs who are really ready to stop struggling with food and weight so that they can funnel all of that wasted energy into building baller businesses. And in that group, I specifically teach women exactly how to achieve food freedom by ending what I call overhunger, ending overdesire, and ending emotional eating, and really teaching you ways that you can live the life that you crave, enjoy food, never freaking diet again, but also stop all of the overeating BS that has been plaguing you. So that is what I teach in the Fempire, and what I'm bringing you today for free here in the Food Freedom for Fempreneurs Facebook group are three big, huge tools that I teach my clients, and I'm giving this to you for free today. Like I said, though, it's really the tip of the iceberg. So if you want to learn more about the Fempire and how you can actually apply this stuff in your real life in a totally sustainable way, you should either comment the word Fempire in the comments below, or you can shoot me a DM and I would be more than happy to talk to you about that. All right, let's dive in. So the first tool that I'm going to give you, now when most people think about, getting through the holidays or not overeating over the holidays or how to not gain weight over the holidays or whatever it is, when most people think about that, they are typically thinking about things like portion control. They are typically thinking about, limiting how much X, Y, and Z they eat. And they're also often thinking about exercising it off or making up for it later, somehow compensating later. And that is the mistake that people make. Is what we do is we approach eating, we approach our relationship with food, we approach the experience of Thanksgiving, which it doesn't matter when you're watching this. Even if Thanksgiving's past, we're still in the holiday season, right? And you're still experiencing the total onslaught of food temptation galore. So a lot of times we think it's that I have to be controlled. I need self-control. I need discipline. I need willpower, and I need motivation. The problem when people have that kind of thinking, which is, by the way, like 99.9% of us, the problem with, oh, there's two of you here. Tell me who you are. Drop a hello in the comments. I would love to see who you are. I can't actually see who you guys are. So unless you tell me, I don't know. So say hi in the comments, in the chat. But so the mistake that people make is they approach it from this, like, I need more of this, like, steely steadfastness. I have to be really, really, really tightly wound, essentially, is what it comes down to, right? The problem with that, the problem with this idea that you need more willpower or more self-control or more discipline, the problem with that is that, Danny McNair, I've been thinking about you so much lately. I'm so happy that you're here. Like, you were even in my dream, I think, not last night, but the night before. Anyway, so the problem with that is when we think that we need more of that stuff, the truth of the matter is that stuff, willpower, motivation, self-control, all of that. Oh, Elise, yay. Oh, good. I'm so glad you're here too. The problem with all of that is that those are finite resources, right? So willpower is actually willpower, self-control, all of it. Like, let's just lump it all into one category for a second. Those are finite resources. And what I mean by that is that we wake up every morning with only a certain amount of willpower for the whole freaking day, right? And so the issue is that we use willpower all day long. This is often why you're more motivated in the morning, and then you tend to lose motivation in the evening. I was just experiencing this myself, where I started switching my morning workouts to evening, and I found that over the last couple of weeks, I have missed so many workouts. So when I went to look at that, I was like, oh, I got to put them back in the morning, right? Because I'm just not motivated. And it doesn't mean that you can't shift your thinking or shift how you're being. But the truth is, at the end of the day, I don't have a ton of willpower and self-control and discipline left because I've used it all up during the day, making a million other choices that we make during the day that require willpower and self-control, right? So the point is that when you're relying on those things, you have to remember that they deplete themselves over the course of the day. So by the time you get to 5 o'clock and you swore that you weren't going to have more than, one drink, or you swore you weren't going to have more than one piece of pie, the next thing you know, you're having it. And it's not your fault. It's the way that your brain was designed, right? So the first thing that I want you to do here is, and it's the most important thing, is to actually make a decision now to give yourself the gift of self-compassion over the holiday. This is not one of the tools that I'm promising you. I'm giving you 3 specific tools. But the actual self-compassion piece is foundational and fundamental in the Fempire, in what I teach my clients, right? So for those of you who are here who are either a current or former client, I am constantly talking about compassion and self-compassion. And a lot of times we are afraid to be compassionate with ourselves because we think that then we're just going to then do more of that behavior, right? So we think we have to give ourselves tough love and punish ourselves when we have, quote unquote, been bad or out of alignment, when really what you need is self-compassion. And here's why. I love to share this little bit from it's a book called The Confidence Code, and I can never remember the names of the authors. It's Katie and Claire. They both have last names that I cannot remember off the top of my head. Phenomenal book. You should totally read it. I will drop it in the chat after this. But they specifically point out in their work that the purpose of self-compassion is that self-compassion places our individual experiences in the framework of a shared human experience. Now, what that does is then that self-compassion, if you can access self-compassion, you will drive your own confidence, which will allow you to take the very risks needed that build confidence. Self-compassion is a safety net that actually enables us to try again, to try for more, to try for harder things. So what happens is when you don't have self-compassion, you beat yourself up for it, you feel shame and guilt. Shame and guilt according to Brené Brown, shame and guilt, the only action that come from shame and guilt is hiding. And then what do we do when we hide? We eat some more. Right? So it's like this self-fulfilling, like it's a vicious cycle. The way that you tip out of that vicious cycle is by employing self-compassion, because self-compassion is actually going to increase, now this is according to the confidence code, increase motivation because it cushions failure. So I love the work by the two women who wrote the confidence code, but also that is why every single thing that I teach my clients is always rooted in self-compassion and curiosity. We're not going to talk about curiosity today, but I want to start with that because I really, really want you to give it a try. I promise you, having self-compassion is different from making excuses. So if your brain, you're like, oh, but I really want to eat, a 10th cookie. Well, guess what? That's not self-compassion, right? I'm going to eat the 10th cookie because Leah said that's self-compassion. No, that's not self-compassion. And we're going to get into what the 3 actual steps that you're going to take this tomorrow, and any time that you're going into a food event such as this one, to really help yourself. All right. Danny said, oh, yay. Elise said, I love confidence code, right? It's so good. And Danny says she just listened to a podcast yesterday with Kristen Neff, and it was all about self-compassion. Yay, Danny, you'll have to send me that one. Love it. All right. So here are your top 3 unconventional ways that you are going to become somebody new with food tomorrow and not overeat your way through Thanksgiving. So the first thing, the first tool I want to give you is a question. It's a question that you're going to ask yourself. It is one of my favorite questions to ask. I ask myself this question all the time, particularly before any kind of event, travel, anything where there is it's like a special time where overeating has historically been a thing, right? Here's the question. Before I give you this question, I want to tell you where I got it. So Peggy Orenstein, she wrote 2 phenomenal books. If you are raising children or in any way have nieces or nephews or you're a teacher, you need to read these 2 books. The first one is called Girls and Sex, and the second one is called Boys and Sex. And Peggy Orenstein has done some of like the most groundbreaking work on young people and their like sexuality, their sexual nature. Yes, because teenagers are sexual beings as much as we hate to think about that. So anyway, I digress a little bit there. Peggy Orenstein started asking her girls. So she would counsel girls, and she started asking girls, and she talked about this in the book, Girls and Sex. She started asking girls this question. When they were thinking about having sex for the first time, she started asking them this particular question. She would say, what is the experience that you want to have? And that is the question, even though I'm not counseling you on the first time you're having sex here, although I'd be happy to if you'd like. But it's that exact question that I want you to ask yourself about Thanksgiving tomorrow or about whatever the event is that you're going to. What is the experience that you want to have? And I would actually invite you to even go a step further and not only ask yourself the question, but write down your answer. Now, if you're here live, you are more than welcome to drop your answer into the chat. And even if you're watching the replay, which I know most of you do, you can drop your answer while you're watching the replay into the chat. What is the experience that you want to have? And what I find fascinating about this question is that when you ask yourself that question, what you uncover is that most of the time it has nothing to do with food. Even though the top thing we think about when we think about Thanksgiving or we think about Christmas or we think about the party or we think about the blah, 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 it's always food, right? But when you really ask yourself, what's the experience that I want to have? The answer is never, I want to feel stuffed. I want to stuff myself so freaking hard that I have to unbutton my pants and lay down on the living room floor, which, by the way, was completely what I used to do. Danny, thank you so much. She says, I want to feel closeness and joy with my family. I'm so glad that Danny shared that because that is probably the most common answer for all of us, right? Like, I want to feel connection is often the big one. I want to feel restored. I want to feel spiritually alive. I want to feel rejuvenated. I want to feel whatever it is, hydrated. That's how I feel right now. If you missed me at the top of this, I think I ate something bad last night. I'm not feeling great. But I want to feel hydrated. I want to feel vibrant. I want to feel alive. I want to feel grounded, right? Like there's so many experiences that we want to have. But most of the time when we come together with people, the feeling that we want to have is connection. Now, I'm going to insert 2 little tips here because these 2 tips, I wasn't planning on inserting these, but since Danny's here, it made me think of it. These 2 tips, when you're thinking about what is the experience that you want to have, I remember when I first asked myself this question, when I was at the beginning of my journey with this end of overeating, and I was getting together with my family for the first time. I have an Italian American family. It's all about food, and it's loud, and it's fun, and there's lots of cocktails, right? And I remember being a little bit anxious because I'm like, oh God, I had released a bunch of unwanted weight. I was no longer kind of food obsessed, which I used to be. And I come from a total foodie family, by the way. Like my parents lived to cook. Everybody in we're the kind of family that you're eating breakfast and everybody's talking about what you're going to have for lunch kind of thing. That's all we talk about. And what I realized was that I noticed that when my family would all get together, everybody's eyes would be down. We all were always looking at the food. Because either something else was coming out, like some new dish or appetizer, and I was like, ooh, or it's this big spread, or it's this or that. But we're always looking down. And even though we talk to each other and we love each other, the focus was always on the food. And I remember thinking to myself, when I asked myself that question, what is the experience I want to have? And the very loud and clear resounding answer to me was connection. I want to feel connected. And I remember specifically thinking, I've gone through so many holidays, with my sister-in-law, and never really even talked to her. You know what I mean? We were all just there and a lot of the food. I'm like, I kind of want to know how she's doing. I want to talk to Cindy about work. I wonder how things are going. I want to connect with my sister-in-law, right? I'm thinking about my brother's wife, by the way, not my husband's sister. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But that's the point, right? Is we tend to want connection, but then our eyes are down and we're focused on the food, and then we're overeating, and then we're very preoccupied with being overly full and uncomfortable. And now we're really not connecting, because when you don't feel good physically, it is very hard to connect to other people. It's very hard to focus on other people. So now the gift of your attention has been robbed, right? Because now you're focused on how uncomfortable you are, and the regret and the shame and the guilt. And so maybe you go eat more, and then you're just compounding it. So what I decided to do, and this is a tip I'll share with you, is to just intentionally lift my gaze. Just lift my gaze. So I would just notice that when my gaze would go down to the food and everybody's gaze was going down to the food, I just actively lifted my gaze. Look around. Who can I connect with? Who do I want to connect with? It made a world of difference. It made a world of difference in that experience. I did not eat nearly as much as I would have. And I actually connected to people that I hadn't connected with in a really long time. So that's one tip under the umbrella of what is the experience you want to have tool. The second tip that I said I would share is what I call a sacred pause. So a lot of times we get really into the food and it's almost like tunnel vision. And when you notice yourself in that place where you're kind of getting a little bit food crazy, right? Which is at least my experience. That's when it's like, okay, let me just pause. Right? Let me just put this fork down. Let me just put this bun down. Let me just put down whatever it is, finish chewing what's in my mouth, swallow it, and take a few breaths and just pause, right? Nobody even notices. Sometimes people notice because all of a sudden you're losing steam. But it's no, I'm just pausing. I'm just taking it in. And that's a great time to ask yourself the question, is this the experience that I wanted to have? And what you're doing when you ask yourself that question is you're just bringing yourself back. Am I actively creating the experience that I want to have or not? Right? That's it. And if I'm not, how can I get a little closer to that? So now that's going to bring me to tool number 2, which is another question I want to share with you. I'm going to take a drink of water. So the second question that I wanted to share with you all, it's a tool. And that question is, what is the feeling that I want to have after it's all done. So after Thanksgiving is all done, what is the feeling that I want to have? Now, this is linked to the experience, right? So like Danny said, she wants to feel closeness. But after it's all said and done, maybe everybody's gone home, maybe you're alone, back with your family or back at work, wherever you are, right? It doesn't matter. What is the feeling you want to have when it's all done? Or maybe even that night, right? When you're putting yourself to bed. What is the feeling that I want to have? And it's such an important question. Now, and a feeling, you guys, I want you to make sure that you're naming a feeling and not a thought. So what I mean by that is a feeling that I want to have is I want to feel deeply satisfied. Maybe I still have that same, I want to feel connected still. Like I want to have connected so well with people that I still feel this deeper sense of connection. I want to feel at peace. I want to feel light. That's a really big one. I want to feel light. I maybe even want to feel energetic, or I want to feel rested and ready for bed. Not rested. I want to feel ready for bed in terms of like just kind of this feeling of being ready to release, to surrender. And the reason that I say that is because I always think to myself, oh, what do I want in the experience? Yes, Danny wants to feel grateful. Yeah, that's a great one. I often think in the experience part of it is I'm like, ooh, I want to have a Manhattan, and I want to have eggnog, and I want to have all these things because I want to have this experience of fun and jovial, like vitality and connection and celebration. Oh, I think of all of those things. I do want all of those things in the experience. But then when I think about how do I want to feel after, the part that I think about is when I'm getting ready to go to bed. Now, a lot of you might think about the next morning or even maybe a few days or weeks afterward because you're thinking about, I don't want to feel regret when my pants don't fit anymore or something like that. For me, as I've gotten older and as I've, my eating habits and patterns are just routine now, so I don't have to think too much about them. But the feeling I always think about when I'm going to bed that night, because I know sleep is the number one most important thing for me in terms of my quality of life, honestly. And if I've had a couple of cocktails and, too much sugar and some really rich food, I'm going to have an awful night's sleep. And I'll try to convince myself before bed that I can drink enough water and maybe tonight I'll be fine and maybe I'll sleep like a rock. I try to go into it with this belief system, but I wake up almost inevitably sometime a few hours after I've fallen asleep, which is very typical, especially perimenopause, and cannot go back to sleep. I feel awful. And then the next day I feel really awful because now I haven't slept and I've got all this weird digestive stuff and blah, 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 the whole thing. You know how it goes. So for me, when I'm answering that question, how do I want to feel? I know exactly how I don't want to feel. And that feeling is feeling like a little bit bloated, like I've had too much to eat, too much to drink, too much sugar, and I'm feeling like crap. Crap is not the feeling that I want before bed. I want to feel proud of myself. I want to feel proud of myself that I enjoyed, and this is going to take us now to the third tool, but that I enjoyed exactly what I planned to enjoy and I didn't betray myself. And therefore, I'm going to bed feeling really damn good. And even if I do wake up in the middle of the night, it's not because I had too much sugar or too much alcohol. And that is what's waking me up. It's just because I'm 46. And this is the season, girl. This is the season, right? Where we start waking up in the middle of the night for no freaking reason, except for it's hormonal. But anyway, that's a whole other life. So this brings me to the last tool that I'm going to share with you. We're going to recap real quick. The first tool is a question. What is the experience I want to have? Write it out. Write it out in a journal. Really, really own the experience that you want to have. Claim it by taking 5 minutes to write it down. The second thing is, what is the feeling I want to have when it's all said and done? And then that brings me to number 3, which is you got to plan it. Right? You have to plan it. And my clients, they hear me talk about planning all the time. You have to plan the experience that you want to have, right? So if what happens is now you're like, oh, I want to have this experience and I want to have this feeling. Okay, well now what's the plan to actually make that happen? Because most of us, we don't have an intentional vision for the day. We don't have an intentional plan. Instead of like, I'm just going to show up and see how it goes. Well, guess what? Let me tell you how it goes. It goes back to the default system, right? It's going to default, especially once you're there with all of the people and all of the food. It's all this like stimulation coming at you. And then you think you're going to like figure out how to be somebody different in the moment. No, you're not. You're going to go back to your default. And for me, my default was I'm going to have 3 freaking helpings of mashed potatoes and gravy and then go and button my pants on the living room floor. That was my default my entire life, by the way. I was like known for this. So you have to have a plan ahead of time. And the purpose of the plan is you are actually using your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain right behind your forehead. It is the reason that your prefrontal cortex is responsible for planning, for judgment. It's all of those executive functioning skills that we have as humans. This is why we're at the top of the food chain, you guys. This is why we don't have any predators that are, there's like, we're no longer being eaten by bears and tigers because we have a prefrontal. We can plan ahead and we can use judgment we can use our judgment now to plan for the future. No other animal that we know of can do it with the level of sophistication that we humans can. So we want to actually tap into that part of our brain so that we can maximize the likelihood of actually creating the experience that you want to have on Thanksgiving. So what does that look like? What does it look like to plan? Well, what it looks like to plan is, luckily for you, you've already done quite a bit of the planning just by visualizing what's the experience I want to have and what's the feeling I want to have. But now we need to kind of get down to like more practical, what am I actually going to consume and what am I actually not going to consume so that I can feel that feeling. So I already started to allude to this a little bit with my own example. But, I come from a boozy family and we love our cocktails and we like to drink. And I also know that if I drink more than a certain amount, I will not have access to the feeling that I want to have that night when I go to bed. And I also will likely overeat and I will definitely eat way more sugar. This is a pattern of mine. When I drink alcohol, I tend to have, that's also coupled with like alcohol and sugar tend to go together for me, right? So, and that has a lot to do with, by the way, the prefrontal cortex like inhibition kind of breakdown. But that's a whole other, neuroscience lesson. So I share this idea because for me, I have to actually plan ahead. Okay, exactly how many alcoholic beverages am I going to have? And which kind, by the way, because I've learned over time, Danny will appreciate this, that wine actually doesn't agree with me as much as I love wine. I love wine. I love red wine. I love sparkling wine. I love rosé. I love wine. And guess what? My digestive system freaking hates wine. Okay. So, fine. But luckily I do okay with gin and vodka and a little whiskey now and again. Right. So the idea there is like, okay, so I'm going to skip the wine. I'm going to plan to not have it, even though I love wine. I'm not going to have it. And instead I'm going to have and I think for me, it might be a Negroni. Negronis are a fun drink that I love. I'll have a Negroni, and then maybe I'll have soda with a splash of Aperol sip on that for the rest of the evening until we eat dinner, right? That could be my plan. I'm just making this up as I go right here on the live with you, but you see the idea. So now notice when I'm planning to have a martini, and by the way, it'll be a 3-ounce martini, and then I'm planning to have maybe a Pellegrino with a little splash of Aperol for, festive fun with a orange rind, an orange peel in it, an orange twist. That is now when I'm planning that. Oh, I know. Elise, I know. I want to cry for me too with the wine. But when I planned that, here's what I also just did. I just planned what I'm not going to be consuming. So by saying I'm going to have a martini and I'm going to have sparkling water with Aperol, that is me planning to not have wine. Because why? Because I didn't plan it. So part of this process is you're going to decide ahead of time what you're going to have. You're going to commit to the decision that you made, and then you're going to plan it and honor your plan. And you guys, this is the part where for most women, we fall the fuck apart. We do, because we have totally normalized betraying ourselves, self-betrayal, right? So it has become so we've become desensitized to the fact that like, oh, well, I said I was only going to have one martini, but oh, well, I'll just go ahead and have two. Right. And then we don't feel good later. We do whatever. We have regrets, yada, yada, yada. That self-betrayal, we have normalized that and become so desensitized to it that what happens is when you're actually making a decision, I'm going to stick to martini and sparkling water with Aperol. When you're making that decision, there's this little voice in your head that's like, yeah, okay, well, she's making this decision now, but we all know that when the time comes, she's going to do whatever she wants. So it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter. You make promises to yourself and then you break them. And that completely erodes trust. And I'm saying you, but I'm talking to me too. Like I have up until a few years ago would do this constantly, right? And even sometimes still do. I have to catch myself, right? We're all in this together. So the idea is that you have to actually, this is an acronym that I teach clients, and this is the third tool that I'm teaching, is you're going to plan what you're going to eat and what you're not going to eat, but you are going to not just decide ahead of time using your prefrontal cortex, but you're actually going to commit to the decision. And that's the mistake that most of us women make is we make decisions all day long, but we don't actually commit to the decision that we made if it's a promise we've made to ourselves. So this time you're actually going to, first of all, don't make any decisions that you're not willing to keep, right? You need to hook yourself up. So it's not like, oh, I'm just going to eat, raw carrots on Thanksgiving. Like, no, girl, don't do that. I want you to choose to enjoy your favorite foods, but you're going to decide ahead of time exactly how much. And when I say exactly, please don't measure anything. We do not need to measure anything. Only thing you need to measure is your success as a business owner or your impact as a leader. Please don't measure food. I mean, just because you have better things to do with your time, right? Instead, Elise says this tool is a total game changer. Elise, are you talking about the DCPH tool, the Decide, Commit, Plan, Honor? I think that's what she's talking about. The idea there is that you are going to plan it ahead of time, and then you're going to honor your plan in the moment. And that's actually the hardest part. So when my brain starts to suggest that I should just have a second martini, even though I didn't plan for one, that's where I have to remind myself, oh, right. I'm here to honor my plan. I have eroded trust with myself over so many decades of broken promises, but now, today, I'm rebuilding that trust with myself. And honestly, you guys, it's the same as if you had cheated on your partner and now you have to rebuild trust, right? Or if you had, if your kid lies to you about something and then they have to earn your trust back, it's the exact same thing. It's just you with yourself. You have to earn your own trust back. And that's what you're doing. So only make promises that you're willing to keep and then honor those promises to yourself. And so honestly, like for me, I actually don't like pie. I know it's very un-American. Oh yeah, Elise says planning ahead and no longer breaking promises to myself. Yes, it's huge. I'm not a fan of pie. So guess what I'm not going to eat tomorrow? Pie. Okay? Now, here's the thing. Before I did this work, I would have just eaten the pie. Why? Because I don't dislike pie. And everybody eats pie on Thanksgiving and everybody else is having pie. So why wouldn't I just eat pie if I'm just going to eat some pie? Right? That was my default state. But when I really, really started to take a look at what brings me real pleasure, and when I really started to see that feeling so freaking stuffed that I have to unbutton my pants is not real pleasure, and that pie is contributing to that, well, then I'm just going to eliminate the pie. I don't really care about pie. Now, I did buy some amazing looking, I love almond paste. And so I bought this like almond thing from a bakery. I'm definitely going to have a couple bites of that. Now, you notice I just said a couple bites. Why? Okay. I wanted to be super clear because the feeling that I want to have at the end of the night is feeling really good and proud of myself. Not proud because I'm stuck to some stupid diet rules, but proud because I didn't overeat. And 3 bites is actually kind of my max when it comes to sugary stuff if I want to have a good night's sleep. Sugar can totally impact. Sugar's an inflammatory and I have some autoimmune stuff, so sugar can really aggravate me. I mean, it's delicious in the freaking moment, but it can totally impact my sleep and then how I feel the next day. So the point of me sharing that is that I know my quote unquote limits, but they're not limits because of weight loss. They're limits because I am prioritizing feeling really good. And if I'm prioritizing feeling really good, I'm not going to eat more than 3 bites of a dessert. especially after some other rich foods on Thanksgiving. So let me wrap this all up for you in this big, beautiful bow. This was a bit longer. This live was longer than a lot of my lives, but it was a lot because tomorrow's a big overeating day, right? And that's what I do. Is my superpower is I help women stop overeating. So the first thing is you want to ask yourself, what experience do I want to have? The second thing is, what's the feeling I want to have when it's all said and done? And then the third thing is, okay, so how do I plan to have that experience and to access that feeling? I'm going to make a plan. I'm actually going to write out a plan, and then I'm going to decide, commit, plan, and honor the plan. Hardest thing ever. And you get to do all of that with a ton of self-compassion. So here's the last thing I'll say is, if tomorrow doesn't go as planned, if you wrote your plan and then it doesn't go as planned, I just want you to know that that's because you are normal. You're a human being. And you also probably need more support than just you trying to do this on your own from watching a 30-minute video, right? Most of us do. So if you are somebody who historically, up until now has a habit of overeating, or maybe you feel hungrier than most people. I know that was true for me. I was always hungry, and I could eat as much as my husband. He's 6'7". He was an athlete when we met, and I could eat as much as him. Like, something wrong there, right? Like, why? I'm 5'7". I shouldn't be able to eat as much as this huge man, right? The point is that I was very hungry, and I could eat a lot of food before I would feel stuffed. That was the second clue. I either felt starving or stuffed. There was very little in between for me. So if that's for you, you're suffering from something that I call overhunger. If you are somebody who suffers from overdesire, i.e. strong cravings, I used to have the strongest cravings. And they were usually for specific foods. They would be for pasta, for bread, some sweets. My desire for sweets increased after I had my son, but and then definitely, wine or whatever it is, chips might be another craving. I had all kinds of cravings. And that is actually symptomatic also of a hormonal imbalance that can be totally fixed without taking any drugs or weird stuff, by the way. I shouldn't say weird stuff. You just don't need that. So if you're struggling with overhunger, cravings, and if you're also struggling with emotional eating, which is, by the way, almost all of us, it's just not everybody struggles with it. But if you do experience a lot of emotional eating, meaning you're eating when you're not actually hungry, you're not even really necessarily having a craving, but you eat because of stress or boredom or tedium or because you're happy or whatever it is, those are the three most common reasons that people are overeating. And you can solve for that. And if that's you, if you're like, okay, I did everything Leah said in the video, but it didn't turn out that way, and it often doesn't turn out that way, I promise you it's simply because you just need a little more support than you're able to get from a video like this. And like I said at the top of the video, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more tools in your toolbox that are very similar to this, that have nothing to do with measuring anything or counting anything or any of that, right? It's literally a shift in how you're thinking, along with some practical shifts in what you're eating. That is what's going to give you those long-term, 100% sustainable results. And for me, that was, almost 8 years ago now, and 30 pounds, and the whole thing, like everything changed once I figured these pieces out, and it's available to you too. So if you're struggling with this, you should definitely put the word Fempire in the chat, FEMPIRE, and I will reach out to you with information about the Fempire, which is exactly where we do the work to solve this problem. And or you can just message me in the DMs. I know sometimes this can feel private for people, and so but you're in a safe space in this group, but still, if you want to reach out in the DMs, you're more than welcome to. I'm so grateful for you all here in the Food Freedom for Fempreneur group. And I'm wishing you all such a beautiful, pleasureful, happy Thanksgiving. For those of you who are participating in Thanksgiving this week, Elise and Danny, thank you so much for joining me live. I love and adore you both so much. And for those of you watching the replay, I hope you comment and share, and we'll see you soon.
You've been listening to The Life You Crave. I lost 30 pounds years ago without dieting, willpower, or deprivation. I'm on a mission to help other women, including you, do the same. You can book a free weight loss strategy session with me over at leahpinelli.com. That's LIAPINELLI.com. See you on our next call or on the next episode. And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on iTunes.